Hello, I just recovered from the coronavirus. The illness lasted for about 2.5 weeks. I am an astrologer, and once I recovered and was strong enough to look at things, I looked at the astrology going on during this time period. It's very interesting. I want to share that with you. But before I get into the astrology, I want to go over what my experiences were. This will be very helpful when I get into the astrology because I will refer to those experiences. So here's what happened, and I'm going to give you some exact dates so you can track this if you want to as well. On March 9, Monday, March 9, this is the year 2020, of course, I think it was between about 2 and 3 p.m., here where I live in Gainesville, Florida, a 69-year-old male from Sweden came to visit us. He was with his 27-year-old daughter. The plan was he was going to stay here at our house for about 3 days and then go on to his next destination. So I greeted him. I'm quite sure I shook hands with him. Then we realized this guy doesn't look good. He's coughing. He's feverish. A friend of ours came to meet him. She happens to be a nurse. She left immediately. She says, "You need to get tested." And she was on the phone with him, setting up with the hospital for him to get tested for the coronavirus. Fortunately, our house can be split into 2 sections. We have this thing called a Florida room, which can be separated from the rest of the house. We split it up so that my wife Faye and I have the Florida room in our bedroom. They had the rest of the house, and stayed away until we got the test results from the hospital. We didn't get the test results till Saturday. So leading up till that Saturday, I felt fine. I felt great. And on Thursday, I felt particularly energetic. I jog almost every day. And on Thursday, my time was great. I was under my usual time, feeling great. And I've been wanting to go to this chanting and meditation group. They meet every week. I've been wanting to go for months, but I'm so busy with all my research and stuff that I tend not to go. And I kind of made up my mind I was going to go, and I went. In retrospect, I feel stupid for having gone. I feel honestly guilty about it, because the next day, Friday, March 13th, from out of nowhere, it was around 10 o'clock in the morning, I just suddenly felt feverish, just like that. I felt weak. It's like, whoa, what's going on here? And then the next day, Saturday, March 14th, the test results came back for our visitor, and they were positive. I talked to him, very far away about exactly what his symptoms were. Mine were identical. His doctor asked to speak to me, which I was happy to do because I wanted to get some feedback. I knew I had the coronavirus because my symptoms were identical, and I started describing my symptoms to the doctor on the phone. And before I was even done, he said, "You have the coronavirus. There's no doubt about it. Do not come to the hospital. There's no point in it." I was glad he said that because I just wanted to be home and try to recover. He told me I can call him anytime, day or night, if my breathing became difficult, because that's the great fear with the coronavirus, is your breathing. They also registered my name at the hospital so they know that I have the coronavirus and that I might contact them. So that was all set up, which is very, very important. Now let me go over some of the symptoms very quickly, because I will refer to some of this later when I go over the astrology going on at the time. Number 1, dehydration. That's a big part of the coronavirus. For about 2 nights, there were 2 to 3 days where I was extremely ill. I would say that was, I think, Saturday, Sunday, Monday, right around there. The early onset of the illness was also the most intense for me. For 2 nights, I think it was, I woke up every 15 to 20 minutes at night. Nights are very difficult, typically with this illness, and I could only sleep 15 to 20 minutes. I would wake up very thirsty, drink a cup or 2 of water, which was about all I could drink, fall asleep, wake up 20 minutes later, thirsty again. So Point number 2, very weak. I felt like I was in a fog. Everything was hazy, numbness. I felt like I was in a stupor. I didn't feel connected to my body. I could do my online classes. I had some online lectures scheduled. No problem. I could do that for an hour or two. And then, exhausted afterwards, I slept a lot. And the sleep was very healing. People talk about loss of smell and taste. Excuse me. All my senses were dulled. I mean, everything. So, yeah, smell and taste was also... I was just kind of like numb. I had pain throughout my entire body as if I was exercising all day. But because of the numbness, the pain didn't feel excruciating because I couldn't feel anything that strong. Of course, number 4, the fever with chills. That happens with the coronavirus. My temperature went up to only about 99.3 degrees. Would stay there for a few days and then go back to normal and then come back, which is also common. But I did not go over 100 degrees, so that was good. There was some shortness of breath. The increased problem breathing, as I said, is the big concern. I lost 7 pounds in 2 weeks. This is also common. Went from 171 to 164 pounds. It was difficult to eat very much. I just didn't want to eat. It was kind of difficult. I kind of forced myself to eat because I didn't want to be losing like a pound a day. It seemed like too much. So with that, I only lost about 7 pounds in 2 weeks. I had a bright red rash for several days during the intense part of the illness. Covered about 20% of my body, I would estimate. It was bright red. It was itchy, but not terribly itchy. I don't think I was feeling things very much. I was across the middle of my body, my thighs, large parts of my arms. Really unusual thoughts and feelings. And I felt deeply changed by this illness. And I've had, like most people, I've had the flu and colds. I don't feel deeply changed, and I'm not like into everything, some big inner transformation and all that. But this illness, there's something very deep about it, and I'll talk more about that. Let me just tell you quickly about the therapies. I don't take pharmaceuticals type stuff. I don't even take aspirin. I don't think I've taken anything, even like aspirin, for at least 5 years, probably more. I took Tylenol for 2 days during the intense part of the illness, and it really helped. It reduced the fever and the body ache tremendously. I did things like fresh ginger and turmeric. My wife Faye grated the fresh roots and then squeezed them into like a little shot glass. I would take that straight with sometimes mixed or an additional shot glass of oregano oil, grapefruit seed extract, echinacea, golden seal, nettle, blue-green algae, spirulina, vitamin C, probably some other things I don't remember that she made. I also had a lot of ginger, turmeric, and honey tea. At the height of the illness, I stopped taking. After a few days, I realized it was actually dehydrating me, and I stopped taking anything for 3 or 4 days and then started it again. The dehydration is really intense, at least it was for me. Tiger Balm was amazing. It helped me breathe. I found out later from conversation with people who know more about herbs and remedies than I do that camphor should be used. There's camphor in Tiger Balm, also Vicks Vapor Rub. Should really be only used when really needed. So this is a case where you really need it. But as soon as I got better, I stopped that. I had the dry cough, which everybody talks about. And the simple Ricola drops, little cough drops, they were very helpful for the cough. After about a week, I had this craving for nutritional yeast. If you're familiar with it, it's this yellow, flaky stuff. I ate mostly soup, fruits like berries, yogurt, toasted nuts and seeds, a little oatmeal or rice with tons of nutritional yeast on it. I am not a naturopath. I'm not an herbalist. I'm just telling you what I did. You've got to do something. That's just what I did. My wife was nonstop healing me. She wouldn't give up. She did not develop the symptoms So we're very grateful for that. I don't know what would have happened without her giving me all these herbs and applying Tiger Balm and everything. She was very worried about me. I was not worried. I just didn't want to suffer. But if the disease got worse and I, was to die or something, that really didn't bother me. Of course, I didn't want to suffer. Unusual thoughts and feelings. So you could label me a mystic. I get up in the morning. I have these meditations. I feel light in my third eye. I feel like this divine love for everything. That's just how I am. I do this every morning or almost every morning. That disappeared during the illness. I couldn't think clearly, couldn't feel my place in the universe, no blissful feelings. I was just numb and in pain. All that disappeared completely. Anyway, I often have this sense of I'm living on this small planet spinning around the sun in this huge expanse of space. I couldn't sense any of that. I would go out in the sun after the extreme part of the illness, sit in a chair. The weather was beautiful here in North Florida. And I did weird things like I would count to 500, which is about 10 minutes the time it takes the light from the sun to reach us. And I would actually count and imagine the light coming and then landing on my skin. I don't know, just telling you things that was happening. I was basically in a stupor and trying to get some sense of reality. Also, this is interesting. On the first day of the illness, I saw a pink cloud in the room. I thought my eyes must be bloodshot, and then I realized, no, I don't think your eyes are bloodshot. You're seeing something. I don't know if it's real or hallucinated. I told a loved one about this, and she said it probably was people sending me positive thoughts and praying for me. That feels about right. Now, by the way, even though I am a mystic and I have all these, divine love feelings and all this, I don't tend to see pink clouds or dead people or things like that. I just don't have that ability. So this was really, really strange for me. Now, unusual thoughts and feelings. There's a CNN reporter, Chris Cuomo, who has the coronavirus. He's been sharing his stories. And by the way, at the bottom of this slide here, I say I am not a fan of CNN. I like news. I don't want to hear people's opinions, ad infinitum. That's my opinion about CNN. But Chris Cuomo's sharing of his COVID experiences is very helpful to me. I've been watching it every night. It confirms, clarifies my observations. It's just, I feel understood. Everything he's saying just makes so much sense to me. I feel so in tune with it, and it's kind of validating, confirming, and it just feels good to feel like you're not alone in this. And this is true. I still watch it, now, even after I'm recovered. So Chris Cuomo reports, and here's a website page that I got this from, the symptoms took a troubling turn overnight. Tuesday, Cuomo said when he saw a vision of his father, former New York Governor Mario Cuomo, who died in 2015. I'm telling you, I was hallucinating. He said, my dad was talking to me. I was seeing people from college, people I haven't seen in forever. It was freaky that I lived through last night, and it may happen again tonight. And he emphasizes night is very difficult. Night was most difficult for me as well. So, I saw a pink cloud. He sees his he sees his father who had died in 2015, and people, etc. This seems to be common with, at least for some of us. Maybe not everyone, or certainly not everyone. Also on unusual thoughts and feelings, I had some very unusual dreams. One night I dreamt of a yellow butterfly fluttering about, and the butterfly disappeared into the light of the sun. Now, what was interesting about this dream that's not typical for me is while I was having the dream, I was aware I was having the dream and I was interpreting it. Maybe this is because I was only sleeping 10 or 15 minutes at a time, and so maybe I'm only half asleep. I don't know, but to me it was a dream. And I interpreted it that if my illness should get worse and I should die, that was a possibility. It would be like the butterfly I was the butterfly fluttering about and could just go into the light of the sun. So in the dream, I told the awareness from which the dream comes, like my higher consciousness or whatever, that okay, if I get very ill and I die and I go into the light, it's okay with me because my life's work, my great passion, which is vibrational astrology, we still have not validated anything with hypothesis tests. So, it's a work in progress. I don't know how great and wonderful it is or where it's leading to. So if I die, that's okay. In fact, I rather like the idea. So I'm really into this vibrational astrology and this evidence-based stuff. It's not just something I talk about. It's like my heart and soul. And, it's real. And am I really getting anywhere with it? So that's how I felt at the time. Then I woke up. So after waking up and drinking water, I went back to sleep. And then the dream continues as if it never, as if I didn't wake up. It just continues. And a voice told me, or this thought was very strong. It was kind of like a voice, that my discoveries in astrology are wonderful. Well, that was good to know because at the moment I wasn't so sure. So they're wonderful, but I'm not a whole and healthy person yet. Then in the dream, 3 or 4 flowers wilted. So there was this butterfly, and I was like in my backyard, kind of, and there were flowers around. And I knew what that meant. It meant that people who love me and would miss me for a long time, there were just 3 or 4. Probably true for most of us. Then in the dream, I saw a kind of flowing energy, like you see in Van Gogh's painting Starry Night. And the energy moved between people. And in the dream, I knew it meant that people who are kept alive by others who believe in them and love them. So in my dream, I felt energy flowing between people, and that flow of energy, especially love, and love built on believing in somebody. So if you really believe in somebody, you think that they're like honest, they have integrity, they have such goodwill, something about them. Even though they may have problems, you believe in them, and it makes you love them. It actually keeps them alive. And without that, we die. This is just what I understood in the dream. So I told my dream, okay, I got it. If you believe in people and that inspires you to love them, that's what keeps them in their bodies and keeps them alive. Okay, I got it. I never really thought about this before. I tend to take friends for granted. So while I'm into all this cosmic bliss and discoveries and everything, I'm really not thinking about much else, taking most things for granted. And I said, okay, I got it. Friends and this personal love, not just love of everything and feeling a oneness with everything, is really, really ultra important. I overlook it. I got it. I feel more mature. I feel more healthy. I understand. Then my dream said to me, good, now go make your discoveries. And I woke up with those words, good, now go make your discoveries, ringing in my ears. Now, part of the reason I'm sharing this is because something that's happening with the coronavirus for all of us, and also with Chris Cuomo and others, you feel this sense that we're all in this together, this sense of connectedness, oneness, which I have very strongly anyway, but not completely. And so I felt this oneness and connectedness and the importance of it in a personal way, in a way that I've been overlooking and insensitive to. So this is just part of what we're all experiencing, even if we don't get the illness. So I then started thinking about friends who are deeply connected to a sense of oneness of all things, and consequently are very generous. This made me very happy because it's something real right now. Excuse me. Still have a little bit of cough type stuff. it just, I cannot explain how beautiful the feeling was to know that there are people in the world that I can call my friends that are just pure in heart and spirit and so a part of everything and so generous. It just made me want to live. It made me feel strong. Um, it just, I can't even explain it. It's, and also part of the fact that I just take these things for granted and don't appreciate them enough. Um, and the butterfly dream inspired me. That's just what I experienced. And by the way, the next day after that dream of the butterfly, I sat out in the sun for probably 2 hours and walked around a little bit. I saw a butterfly. I was looking at it for a long time. And then I saw a little yellow thing in the corner of my eye. I turned around. There was a yellow butterfly. There aren't a lot of butterflies here at this time of year, and certainly not yellow ones. Anyway, that was a curious thing. So you can feel, I can feel when I watch Chris Cuomo or listen to other people who've had the coronavirus, or just the even if they haven't, this sense of oneness and interconnectedness very, very strong. So there's some good coming out of all of the pain and agony and suffering of the coronavirus. Maybe I see it in Chris Cuomo more than other people because when he talks, it's like hearing myself, experiencing the same kinds of things. Now, here's one more thing I want to share. I really want to get into astrology. I'm going on now 22 minutes. But one more thing I want to share, and this was very odd, is after about a week and I started feeling a little bit better, I also had some lapses back where the fever came back, but overall getting better, I found that willpower was so important. It's like my body just wanted to give up. And I found that if I told my body, look, you're not giving up, you're getting better, we're not going to drag this disease on forever. It was like my body was an obedient and faithful dog and it would listen to me. It was really astounding to me how much my body would follow my willpower, because this is not a psychosomatic illness. And Chris Cuomo also discusses this, that the virus wants us to be indolent, is the way he put it. You can feel like you just want to stay in bed, suffer through it, hope can go away. He tells the story of a doctor who told him to move, breathe deep, do not exercise, but get up and move. And wow, is this true for me? Same experience. Okay, willpower, positive thinking, and patience through it. So lessons learned: be persistent, don't give up, be patient. It felt chronic at the time, but it did lift. The illness lifted suddenly, kind of miraculously to me, after about 11, 12 days, I think. Within 3 days, it cleared up. Be at home, not completely. There's still some minor after effects. Be at home or a beautiful place. Have a doctor you can contact in case of emergency. Try not to get alarmed or despondent. One of the people that Chris Cuomo interviewed has panic attacks. Music helps her. It's very easy, and this is a person who has many more responsibilities than I have. They have children, young children, etc. I'm not in that situation. Having young children that are dependent on me and things like that. So it's willpower. Climb the mountain, but be gentle at the same time. And think about how love sustains us was important for me. One little speculation about the coronavirus, then I'll get into the astrology. I think there are two things going on: how strong your immune system is and how flexible your immune system is. So I think what happened for me is it took at least 3 or 4 days for my body to figure out that this is bad, this virus is a bad guy, go after it. Once my body figured that out, it kicked in very strong. And also I think the virus is very sensitive to a lot of things. It would respond to everything I eat, getting stronger or weaker. I think over time, medical profession is going to figure out a lot of the subtleties of our bodies that tend to make the virus stronger or weaker. It's not just an on-off thing like, get a vaccination or something and turn it off. There's more than just on or off. Anyway, I just thought I'd share that. Okay. Lastly, let me just say that I'm lucky. Very, very lucky. You can read what I typed here, but all right, let's finally, I'm 25 minutes into this, I'm finally going to get to the astrology. I'm going to use this phrase, if you have a hammer, everything looks like a nail. I think we astrologers, we tend to just say, as above, so below. This happened in my life. I got sick. Where's the sickness thing in my chart? I really don't think it's quite that simple. I think of astrology as a force. It's there are these structures in space, and there are these cosmic vibrations that are coming from a higher dimensional reality and that are pushing us. But I don't think it's just like the astrology is like a crystal ball, like what's happening in our lives is repeated in the stars. I don't think it's quite that way. I think of the astrology as a force in our lives, and exactly how that force is working with this illness, I think, can be complicated. For example, I tend to be reclusive, except when I go to astrology conferences. Other than that, I'm very reclusive. That somebody visited me is very unusual. There's a social element to that. Is that going to show up astrologically? What's really going on? Well, here's what I decided, and I made notes about this before I looked at my transits and progressions. Let me give you some background. In vibrational astrology, which is the system of astrology that I use, every planet does one thing. Now, this is very different from most systems, because in a lot of modern astrology, every planet is a mythic character that can take on different forms. In vibrational astrology, those mythic characters develop out of simple, fundamental functions. What does Saturn do? It gets rid of our toys. If transiting Saturn is aspecting something in your natal chart, what happens? Your toys are taken away. In fact, more than your toys. It cuts things out of your life. Saturn's trying to strip you to the bone, to the skeleton, to the structure of things. It's trying to get rid of everything that's superfluous. The problem with Saturn is its idea of superfluous is pretty extreme. It starts cutting out everything. It'll only keep things that last past death, because if they're very temporary, Saturn doesn't think much of it. And it also forces us to decide what is really important. We have to choose. We have to make a decision about what we want to preserve and keep and develop. It's up to us as well. So it's decision time. What's really important? And Pluto is obsessive and compulsive. We have little control over it. Now, in early 2020, Saturn was conjunct Pluto. This describes what the coronavirus is doing. It's causing us to isolate socially. We have to. If we don't, the disease is going to spread. It's cutting out our work. It's cutting out our schools. It's cutting out our play. It's cutting us to the bone. So it's very interesting that as Saturn conjuncts Pluto, we're forced into a Saturn-Pluto reality. This is a graphic ephemeris produced by the Sirius software. I've set it up to be 0 to 360. You can set it up to different, settings. And here's Saturn, the black line. This is for the years 2018 through 2021. So this covers 4 years. So starting in 2018, here's Saturn in black. Here's Pluto, which moves very slowly. So it's almost horizontal, just moving very, very slowly. Here's Saturn, which moves faster, coming down, because it's faster, and then almost touching Pluto, almost conjunct Pluto in May 2019. And then there's the conjunction in early January 2019. And then Saturn retrogrades up again, almost conjunct Pluto, but not quite, in autumn 2020, and then by 2021 separates out. Well, this is interesting. Just as the coronavirus begins and takes off, there we are with Saturn-Pluto, which is what we're all experiencing. However, even though this is true, that we're all forced into this Saturn-Pluto reality, when you go back historically, I don't think it's quite that obvious. So I don't know why the Saturn-Pluto conjunction this time is describing what's going on globally. Other Saturn-Pluto conjunctions not as obviously doing that. But in any case, I'm looking at the coronavirus as very much a Saturn-Pluto phenomenon. Now, if the astrology is involved in my illness or anybody's illness, I expect the Saturn-Pluto with almost any other planets, but especially Neptune, because Neptune is what we live for. It's our dreams, and everything we're living for is getting cut out, and we're also coming down to the bare bones of what's really important: the love, the interconnectedness, all of the money and the games and all the stuff being removed from our lives, disappearing from our lives. So I'm expecting Saturn-Pluto by transit or progression would be involved with Neptune. Maybe it's transiting Saturn-Pluto to my natal Neptune, maybe transiting Neptune to my Saturn-Pluto, also Sun, Uranus, and Mars. This is just what makes sense to me. It's coming right into our lives, the Sun, and something about things becoming alive. Anyway, Sun, Neptune, Uranus, I associate Uranus with spontaneity and like improvisation, being in the moment. This is what I'm expecting. Saturn, Pluto connected to Sun, Neptune, Uranus, and Mars. And also, I'm expecting it in transits and not progressions. The reason for that is that I look at progressions as developmental. It's our natal chart evolving. The secondary progress chart is like our evolving self. So when you get married, when you get a new job, when you make big changes happen in your life, progressions are involved because it's what's developing and happening in our lives. Something that just hits you from the outside, that's not part of your script, so to speak, not part of the ongoing developments in your lives. Somebody visits me, boom, I get the coronavirus. That's a transit. That's how I look at it. That's, everybody's got their own ideas. So I'm thinking this is going to happen with transits and not progressions. I look at the transit-to-natal. I look at, regular aspects, conjunctions, oppositions, square trines, etc. I look at my vibrational things, especially 7 vibration, which I thought might be involved, 11 vibrations. I do not see it. Maybe it's there, and I just, I'm looking at the transits, I'm not seeing it. Isotraps. It shows up in what we call isotraps. They're called planetary pictures in Uranian astrology. We're going to look at these right now, but it shows up in isotraps, and wow, it's like, boom, everything I imagined that would be related to the coronavirus is there in the isotraps. It's fun, it's interesting, it's just one case, it's not proving anything, but it's interesting. Sorry, I forgot to put some water here, I'll be okay. Now, let me show you what an isotrap is. Here's March 12, 2020. This is a BiWheel with my natal chart in the inner ring. That's my birth chart if you want to look at it. I was born May 1, 1949, 4:26 a.m., East Meadow, New York, 3 Aries rising, 3 Aries 15 rising. Now, this is 3 days after the likely contact. It's the day before the symptoms appear. So right as this whole thing's developing, here's transiting Saturn and Pluto on May 12. Pluto at 24 Capricorn, Saturn at 29 Capricorn. The midpoint, they're conjunct, obviously. That midpoint is 26 Capricorn 53. My Sun, Neptune, in my birth chart, my Sun at 10 Taurus, Neptune at 13 Libra, the midpoint is 26 Cancer 52. That means that I did this for 12 noon in Gainesville, Florida. That means that morning, probably around 9 or 10 o'clock or so, the Saturn-Pluto midpoint transiting is opposition my natal Sun-Neptune midpoint. Saturn-Pluto, the two planets that I'm expecting, and Sun and Neptune. I went, whoa. And by the way, I wrote this down on a piece of paper before I looked at my transits and progressions. Maybe I should have taken a picture of it and shown it to you as like proof or something. But anyway, I wrote down Saturn, Pluto, underlined it. This is what's going to happen. Hitting Sun, Mars, Neptune, or Uranus by transit. There it is. Whoa. And the fact that it was the Saturn-Pluto in the sky. So how do I interpret this? I'll show you that on the next slide, but let me just go over one more thing. This configuration is called a planetary picture in Uranian astrology. You can look at it as a midpoint, conjunct or opposition to another midpoint, right? The Saturn-Pluto midpoint is conjunct or opposition, in this case opposition, the natal Sun-Neptune midpoint. Also interesting is that the Sun-Saturn, the transiting Saturn to natal Sun angle is the same as the transiting Pluto to natal Neptune, because this is a symmetrical pattern. You can think of it as a triangle, a symmetrical triangle. It's called an isosceles triangle, but it's just a triangle that's symmetrical. These two angles over here are the same, and the top is cut off. Here it's cut off towards the top of the triangle. In geometry, that's called an isosceles trapezoid. We call it an isotrap for short. In vibrational astrology, in Uranian astrology, they call it, they call it a planetary picture. And what happens is the transiting Saturn to natal Sun angle is the same as transiting Pluto to natal Neptune. Also, the transiting Pluto to natal Sun is the same as transiting Saturn to natal Neptune. So, two pairs of angles are the same. There's a lot of resonance going on. Anyway, it's an extremely powerful pattern. I think it's more powerful than a transit-to-natal aspect. So we're always looking at, transiting Neptune is trine my natal Venus or whatever. Yes, that's important. I think this is more powerful and more important. Now, how do I interpret this? The transiting Saturn-Pluto almost brutally strips away things. This is the interpretation of vibrational astrology. Saturn-Pluto is like brutal. It's like, gone, we're getting rid of this. No, you have no control over it, because Pluto's fanatical and obsessive. Saturn wants to cut to the bone. It just starts stripping things out of your life. Everything is stripped out of my life. Even my dreams and visions, my meditations. This is pretty humbling. You think you're so spiritual. Boom, that's gone. This little tiny virus, which is, 100 to 200 nanometers. I mean, things way smaller than the width of a hair. This thing just stripping away everything. My beautiful morning meditations, gone. I could not think clearly. Not only can I not invent and discover and write software, I can't even think. Everything's taken away. Plus, of course, the physical situation. And also interesting, and Sun-Neptune. Sun-Neptune in vibrational astrology means what you live for. Neptune's not just, in vibrational astrology, it's not just like visions and dreams and psychic and all that stuff. No, Neptune's your everyday life. It's why you get up in the morning. It's why people go to athletic events and get all excited. It's why they go to concerts and get all excited. It's like a dream. It's a vision. They want tons of money because it's like a dream. It's a vision. Neptune is real, tangible things, believe it or not, that feel transcendent. And people go wild over their sports, over their concerts, etc., over money, over a beautiful car. It's like a dream or a vision. This is all Neptune. So my dreams, my visions, gone, erased. I'm just this numb, I'm in a stupor, I'm in pain, nothing. And we're all experiencing this, whether we get the illness or not. It's just if you get the illness, it's really strong. But the way I experienced it, Saturn, Pluto to Sun, it describes it. describes it. And also interesting in this last sentence. So everything's wiped out of my life, gone, but I discover something, that love sustains life. That we're not even alive if we do not love, and if someone does not love us. And this love comes from believing in somebody, comes from just believing in them, just seeing the beauty of who they are, for whatever reason that would be for you. It keeps us in our bodies. So the importance of friendship, of appreciating people, is so much greater because my mind has always been in universal things. I'm worried about kids who are hungry throughout the world. I'm worried about women who are abused. That's wonderful. That's great. It's fantastic. But I'm not thinking about what's right in front of me and the people that are keeping me alive. There's more than these big cosmic global things. So Saturn, Pluto strips you to the bone, and it found something very important that I was overlooking. Now, 6 days later, I'm going to jump over to March 19. There was some transits in between 13 and 19, but I want to skip over to the 19th, 6 days later, because Saturn, Pluto shows up again. Oh, this just blew my mind. My natal Saturn, Pluto midpoint is activated by the transiting Neptune, Pluto midpoint. So there's that transiting Pluto, 24, Capricorn 40, on March 19, Neptune at 18, Pisces 49. You get the midpoint, 21, Aquarius 44, exactly opposition, my natal Saturn, Pluto midpoint. Wow. Saturn, Pluto by transit, and Saturn, Pluto natally, the two planets I thought would be most important. It's just interesting. It's interesting. One case doesn't mean that much. But I've always known, for decades, that these midpoint-to-midpoint configurations are very important. Now I'm realizing they may be even more important than I realized. And what does it mean? Neptune-Pluto inspires me to connect with what is really most deeply important. So Saturn-Pluto, what's deeply important to me? Neptune-Pluto is it's a dream, a vision that we cannot resist, Pluto. And that dream is coming into my heart and soul. It's okay. I start to feel like it's okay that I don't feel divine bliss and have any discoveries. I'm feeling after a week that something more important is happening deep within me, something I've been missing. So, Saturn-Pluto midpoint by transit and in the natal chart. Also on March 19, there was another thing. In addition to the Neptune-Pluto midpoint, opposition, my natal Saturn-Pluto, transiting Jupiter-Uranus midpoint. So here it is, Jupiter and Uranus in the outer wheel of the transits on the 19th, was opposition my natal Neptune-Pluto. Now this is interesting because this looks happy. Jupiter-Uranus is enthusiastic. Neptune-Pluto, what my vision is. This should be wonderful. This should be, I should be thrilled. I should feel inspired. I should feel like life is great. Optimism. Jupiter-Uranus is bubbly optimism coming into what my vision and dream at a deep level is. It should be great. By the way, the Jupiter-Uranus transiting midpoint, 13 Pisces 37, opposition my natal Neptune-Pluto midpoint, 13 Virgo 37. Well, interesting. We have this idea. Let me go back to the previous slide. We have this idea in VA. I've got it in this third of the 4 paragraphs. One energy does not negate another one. So sometimes people will say, oh, but I had this going on, Jupiter, Uranus, Neptune, Pluto, so the other's not so bad. Well, we don't think of it that way. Not exactly, maybe a little bit. We don't think of it exactly that way in vibrational astrology. Energy is energy. One energy or configuration or whatever you want to call it does not negate another. Now, it does give you an option. You know, it's like if you're in a noisy room and there's a quiet room next door, yes, it does help in the sense you can go next door to the quiet room. But that noisy room is still there. So all this Saturn-Pluto stuff is not removed. But what's interesting is after about a week into this illness, around March 19, and I start feeling better, let's see, around the 13th, about 10 days later, around the 23rd, 24th, 25th, is when I really start to feel better. So I'm still really ill, feverish and stuff around the 19th, but now I'm quite sure I don't have to worry about the butterfly disappearing into the sun. I'm going to live. Everything's going to be fine. I'm getting better. And oddly enough, I'm feeling really good. I mean, I'm usually, if I'm not productive for a day, I'm like frustrated, like, I didn't get anything done today. Oh, I've got to go shopping. I can't go shopping. I've got programs to write. I've got research to do. Get out of my life, you know. And now I'm not able to work at all, but I'm feeling good, and I'm kind of, I'm sick. Yeah, it's really strange, but true. I'm feeling optimistic. I'm just so happy to deepen my awareness. Anyway, Jupiter, Uranus opposition Neptune, Pluto. For some reason, I'm feeling great. I'm in awe of the trees, the wind, the sun. Everything's miraculous to me. My body's still numb and in pain. I can hardly work, but I do work through this. I'll talk about that later. But very oddly, I feel very upbeat. And I've never been so grateful to be alive. I can't even explain it. It's just, life is a wonderful miracle, and I don't know. I'm just feeling great. In my stupor and my pain, and miserable at the same time. It makes sense to me, is all I can say. Now, in between those two dates, March 12, March 19, on March 16, 3 days after the symptoms appear, which is around the peak of the illness, right around this time period, the transiting Jupiter-Neptune midpoint is opposition the natal Uranus-Neptune midpoint. This is when I'm having the dreams of the butterflies. In the midst of this illness, when I can only sleep 15 or 20 minutes a night, I start having dreams of the butterflies and going into the light, and I'm analyzing my dream while I'm asleep. These are things I don't normally do. I mean, I'm just not gifted in that way. It doesn't happen. So what's interesting is while my sense of bliss and other things you might call spiritual have disappeared, this other sensitivity wakes up, which is not normally so strong. And Uranus-Neptune in vibrational astrology is what we call the psychic combination. Neptune by itself is not psychic. And Jupiter-Neptune is hugely expansive and visionary. So this visionary energy comes into my inspiration, and I'm having dreams of butterflies and talking to the consciousness, the higher consciousness of my dream. Believe me, I wish I was that enlightened that I experience this all the time, but I don't. And just be honest about it. I mean, I'm all blissed out and everything, and very good with my research and software development. But talking to my higher consciousness in my dreams, no. I'm not that awake normally. Jupiter-Neptune midpoint, opposition the natal Uranus-Neptune midpoint, while that's happening. It just fits too well. It fits too perfectly for me to think. Also, the pink cloud thing, I don't know how to explain it, but it just really makes sense. Now, let me make a note here. The coronavirus has a strong Saturn-Pluto quality, is what I'm proposing. Other viruses may not. They may simply be devastating to people's health. They may cause a lot of deaths. The coronavirus seems to be stripping away our superficiality and digging deep within ourselves. I don't know if all viruses do this or etc. But anyway, I just want to mention that maybe what's happening here with the coronavirus, to all of us, whether we get the illness or not, and and then, if you get it, you kind of experience it maybe more intensely and directly. This theme of just getting down to bare bones and what's really important in life. Maybe it's specific to this one. I don't know. Now, how did I find these transit-to-natal isotraps? You can call them planetary pictures. You can call them midpoint-to-midpoint alignments. We sometimes call them conjunctions or oppositions. So I illustrated in BiWheels just to make it clear what they are. But I don't normally look at them in BiWheels. The way I find them is by running the timeline. This is the timeline format in the Sirius software. I ran it for the month of March 2020, and there it is. It tells me Neptune, Pluto, midpoint. That first one is transit. Second one is natal, transit to natal. To Saturn, Pluto, midpoint, March 12. And you can see it lasts the whole month. Kind of weak towards the beginning of the month. You see the red is not as dark, and getting a little weaker towards the end of the month, fitting exactly with the time of the virus. I'm making this video on April 8th. I've still got some after effects of the virus. So it times perfectly. Here's the Saturn-Pluto midpoint, opposite natal Sun-Neptune midpoint on March 12th. That's the first one I talked about. So there they are. Here's the Jupiter-Neptune midpoint, opposition Uranus-Neptune midpoint on the 16th that I talked about. And here's the Jupiter-Uranus transiting midpoint, opposition natal Neptune-Pluto midpoint on the 19th. Those are the four. They're right there. What's interesting to me is that the same phase angle, like Jupiter-Neptune angular distance in the sky, is the same as the natal Mars-Uranus angle was also on the 12th. These are also isotraps formed in a different way. So they're very, very similar, but it's the midpoint to midpoint that I looked at it and it was like, wow, oh my God, this is what I'm experiencing. These other things I would have to, I'd have to kind of struggle to make sense out of. So midpoint to midpoint showed up more conspicuously and more obviously than other kinds of four planet combinations. These are also planetary pictures. We call them isotraps in VA. Interesting. And I've kind of noticed this. I have noticed it. I have. Just, sort of anecdotally, just looking at charts. I don't have any clear, controlled research on this. But midpoint to midpoint, very powerful. There's a third kind, the composite, which are also extremely powerful. But they occur less often. They're rare. So I have a summary here. Transiting midpoint to natal midpoint isotraps are very important in VA. But, the problem I've had in the past is if you include transiting Sun, Mercury, Venus, and Mars, there are so many of them. I could show you, but it's like there are like a dozen that are exact every day. It's information overload. I've never known what to do with it. One thing I've learned from looking at this is to just look at the outer planet, midpoint to midpoint, Jupiter through Pluto, those 5 transits. By limiting to the 5 outer planets, it just highlights some, a handful of things, so it's not information overload. And those handful of things, especially the midpoint to midpoint, describe what happened. So precisely, exactly what I had written down on the paper before I looked at the transits. It's obvious in retrospect. Yeah, duh. Cut out the interplanet transits, you won't have so much. But, you've got to work with things, experience it, and feel it, and now it's really sinking in. And by the way, if you wanted to set this up in the Sirius software, what I did, you go into the timeline format. I selected planets plus asteroids, no birth time. I renamed it. I'll show you where you rename it. And my settings, and I changed this to my detailed isotrap settings, so I can find it again. You can change the names and menus. So I selected transit to natal, month of March 2020 for 1 month. I could have entered my place here of Gainesville, Florida. That will change the date sometimes by 1 day. But I was working fast. I didn't bother to enter it. They're slow-moving transits. They're going to last a long time. And then you click this Customize Planets and Aspects to to set what you want. I'll show you this real quickly. For planets, here it is. I selected for planet-to-planet aspects. I selected Jupiter through Pluto, and I selected Sun through Pluto natally. Very, very simple. And then for midpoints, there's 2 tabs here in the Sirius software. This one's just for midpoints. I selected the same thing. Jupiter through Pluto transiting, Sun through Pluto natal. So I'm on the Planets tab, and I select both tabs, set them both to outer planet to the 10 basic planets. That's what I did. I mean, you can experiment with other things, but I just wanted to get some basic ideas. And then you go to the Aspects tab, and for planet aspects, for what I am showing you, I have conjunction, opposition, square, trine, sextile, the 5 Ptolemaic aspects. But I have also selected things like quincunx, semi-sextile, semi-square, sesquiquadrat, 5, 7, 9, 11, and 13 vibration, or 16 vibration is what it shows here. I also had checked 13 sometimes to see what's going on there. And I didn't see much with these aspects. Maybe I missed it, but I didn't see it. So I wanted to focus mainly on the midpoint to midpoint, and I removed these so I didn't have all these, to make my listing shorter and not have all these aspects that are not related to what I'm sharing with you. And then for midpoint to midpoint, remember there are 2 tabs here. I select conjunction and opposition. So I'm just looking at conjunctions and oppositions. And here's the appearance tab on the right. That's where you can change the menu items. So that's basically it. I didn't show you the midpoint. You know what? Let me run the Sirius software because I need to show this to you. The midpoint declination composite settings. Hold on a second while this comes up. While this is coming up, let me go ahead and let me quit this. I don't think that's the one I ran. Okay, let me run this. Yeah. And let me show you. This is kind of helpful too. You'll get to see, it's very helpful. You'll get to see exactly what I was doing. Let me shrink this window so you can see the whole thing in the captured area. So I go to continue with previous session. I'm going to shrink this window down to the captured area on the screen. Now you can see it. That's good enough. And I think I might still have my chart up here. David, I'm just clicking on my chart. Timeline. Yeah, there it is. There it is. So this is nice to see. Let me stretch this out a little bit. Okay, let's stretch it out a little more. Just grab the end of this window. I want to get the whole thing there. Let me just stretch it a little bit more. Okay. Good enough. All right. So there it is. You see the, there it is. Neptune, Pluto, midpoint, transiting opposition to natal Saturn, Pluto, 19th. Exactly what I just showed you. I just saved this to file. You click on Save to File. View in Graphics Program. It comes up in the Paint program. And then, whoops, didn't mean to do that. And then you put little circles around that. That's what I did. But what I want to show you is if I right click, and here's exactly what I showed you in the PowerPoint. If I go to Customize, Midpoints, Declination Composite, I think I captured the screen and forgot to put it in my PowerPoint, so I'm just going to show you right here. You check transiting planet to natal midpoint, midpoint to natal planet, transiting midpoint to natal midpoint, and it says if you do not, calculations are slow. If not checked, I want it slow. I want all of the planets, not just same planet. That would be like Venus, Mars to Venus, Mars. So you check these 3. It gives you all of these, not just same planet to same planet would mean Saturn, Uranus to Saturn, Uranus. I want all of them. And then down here, you select composite, same angle, excuse me, and also check this, same angle, different planets. That gives you this huge list. But by keeping the planets to only transiting Jupiter through Pluto, the list is not overwhelmingly large. Okay. I'm almost done here. I'm at 1 hour. This video is longer than I thought it would be. Let me go back to my PowerPoint. And by the way, here's where I ran solar arc to natal, and I ran progress to natal. This shows the 3 months of February, March, April 2020. I just didn't see things that looked interesting to me, that looked related to the illness. I'm just showing 3 months. This listing continued. There's more stuff, but just to show you the idea that I ran solar arc to natal, progress to natal, progress to progress. I didn't really see anything that seemed related to the illness. So just showing that you can do that. Conclusions: transit-to-natal midpoint isotraps are really important. This analysis suggests that we should look at them more than we have in vibrational astrology. Limiting ourselves to just outer planets makes it more manageable, not information overload, picks out the really big things. And as I mentioned before, I looked at vibrational patterns, 7, 8, 11, etc. Didn't see anything that stood out. The isotraps seem to describe the illness. That's it, my friends. Okay. Well, I hope you found that interesting. Thank you very much for listening. God bless. Namaste.